Hello and welcome to this video that will cover exchange surfaces for GCSE AQA biology. So exchange surfaces are an important part in biology because it allows stuff, mainly particles, gas particles, etc., to move between different environments. And the basics behind this video will be looking at, first of all, what kind of substances move across, and also what factors depend upon this movement of substances. So the first thing is some examples. So the first example we have here is that cells diffuse across to take in substances they need, or they use diffusion to take in substances they need and get rid of any waste products. So the first example we've got is oxygen and carbon dioxide. We will look at this example in another video more in depth, but essentially oxygen and carbon dioxide are transferred between cells and the environment, and also they are transferred through surfaces in the lungs, so the carbon dioxide can escape and also the oxygen can be taken in. So this is the first sort of thing where we have an exchange surface inside our own body. Another example we've got is in humans. We have the urea, which is a waste product from breaking down proteins. This diffuses from cells into the blood plasma for removal from the body by the kidneys. So essentially, what we have is you have your cells and you've got your waste products here, and they exchange out of the cell into, we could say, the main bloodstream here. And that's again an organism exchanging a substance with their environment. So this time the cell is giving the urea, or the breakdown from the proteins, the waste from the proteins, breakdown into the bloodstream. And one of the key things that we'll look at now is the surface area to volume ratio. This is a really important ratio because it determines how easy it is for substances to exchange across different surfaces. So the surface volume to volume ratio is given SA to V, and one of the key things that we have is that a higher surface area, so essentially a higher surface area equals an easier to exchange particles or substances, we should say. Now the reason this is easier is because if we look at a diagram, let's say we have a box, a box like this, and you've got some particles inside it that want to escape, and then you have a bigger box here, okay, with a bigger surface area. Now remember, we're not looking at volume, we're looking at surface area. So the bigger surface area here allows more transfer surface, okay? It means that there's more opportunity for the particles to escape. If you have a surface area that is very small, then that means that there's not a lot of room for the particles to escape out of the surface. If you have a really large surface area, then that means the particles can escape. This can also be related to heat transfer. You may have done this in physics or earlier in biology, where you have, for example, if you have an animal that has a large surface area, they find it very difficult to retain their heat because the heat can escape because there's lots of surface for it to escape from. However, if you have an animal that is very small, then you'll find that the surface, it can retain heat better because it has a lower surface area and therefore it doesn't lose as much heat. And this is exactly the same idea that goes into exchanging substances. The bigger the surface area, the more likely it is for the substance to escape from the material and exchange to the surface outside. So that's a really key concept. If we look at the mathematics, here is an example of the mathematics. We can compare the surface area to volume ratio. So it's really important that you understand the difference between surface area and volume and when you're calculating them. So here we have a rhinoceros that is being essentially reduced down to a cardboard box, or, well, not cardboard, a cuboid, essentially. So of 2 centimeters, 4 centimeters, and 4 centimeters. So what you have to remember, and it'd be good to remember this from mathematics, is the formulas for volume and surface area. So for the volume, remember it's length times height times width. So here the volume of this one is 2 times 4 times 4, which is equal to 32 centimeters cubed. Now for the surface area, this is a different calculation because the surface area, you're only measuring the area of all these rectangles. So you're just measuring essentially the surface part. You're not measuring anything inside. That's what the volume is doing. The surface area is just measuring the area of each of the shapes that make up the material. So here we've got different rectangles. You've got rectangle 1, and if you remember, if we draw this shape as a 3D shape, so dotted line, dotted line, dotted line, this rectangle on the opposite side will also have the same area because it's got a width of 4 and a height of 2. And we can say the same for the one on the side here, this 4 by 2, and this will have the same as the opposite side, 4 by 2. And then we've got top and we've got bottom as well. So the top of the shape has the same area as the bottom of the shape. And essentially you're going to add these up. So the area of shape 1 is going to be 2 times 4, and then we've got 2 of these, so we times that by 2. Then the next one, let's do the side of the shape, so area 2 is going to be 4 times 2, and then we times that by 2. And then the final one is shape 3, where we are going to do, again, the top one is 4 by 4, and we're going to times that by 2. And then we can add those together and we get an answer of 64 centimeters squared. So when we calculate the volume to surface area or surface area to volume, make sure you read the question so you completely understand which way round it is. So here surface area to volume ratio is 64 to 32. And then this can be cancelled down into a much simpler one, so we can divide both sides by 32, which gives you a 2-to-1 ratio. So that means it has twice the surface area to volume. You've got the second example here with a mouse. So a mouse is a 1 by 1 by 1. We can see here, but the volume is 1 times 1 times 1, which gives you 1 centimeter cubed. And the surface area, each of the rectangles is a 1 by 1. So you'll have 6 rectangles all around the mouse, which gives it a surface area of 6-to-1. So therefore, the cube has a much larger surface area to volume ratio of 6-to-1, which means that it can potentially easily, for comparing the ratios, this will more easily be able to transfer substances because it has a much higher surface area to volume ratio. I'm now going to give you the opportunity to practice your own. So here is an opportunity to try these calculations. So here we have a box which is, and it's very terribly drawn, I apologize, but this is 5 by 2 by 3. So can you find, actually no, sorry, the 3 should be the length. So can you find, and pause the video and give it a go, can you find the surface area to volume ratio of this shape? So pause the video and try it. Okay, hopefully you've paused the video and given this a go. So here's the answer. So the volume, V, is calculated by the height, which is 2, times the width, which is 5, times the length, which is 3. So you just do 2 times 5 times 3 on the calculator and get 30. Now obviously there's no units here, so let's say this is in meters to give us some units, so 30 meters cubed. Then we have the surface area. So the surface area of the shape is just all of the essentially things that construct the shape. So here we've got the outside, so the rectangle here, so rectangle 1, and that's the same on the other side. It's terrible drawing, but it will be the same on the other side. So it's going to be 2 times 2 times 5 plus shape 2, which is the sides, we can say. So this is going to be a height of 2 and a length of 3. So 2 of those, so it's going to be 2 times 3 times 2. And then finally, we've got the shape at the top and the shape at the bottom. So this is going to be the width times the length. And we've got 2 of those because we're 1 on top, 1 at the bottom. So it's 2 times 5 times 3. So this is going to equal 2 times 2 times 5 plus 2 times 3 times 2 plus 2 times 5 times 3 on the calculator. And that gives you an answer of 62 meters squared. So therefore we can say that the surface area to volume ratio is as follows, 62 to 30. And then we can simplify this down. So if we divide this by 2, 62, it becomes 31 to 50. And that's the simplest that this can go. You can't simplify that any further. So that's just a basic example of this situation. The last thing then is looking at some of the calculations of this. So here we've got a multicellular organism multicellular organisms essentially need exchange surfaces. In single-celled organisms, gases and dissolved substances can diffuse directly into or out of the cell membrane. This is because they have a large surface area compared to their volume, so enough substances can be exchanged across the membrane to supply the volume of the cell. So essentially, what it's saying, a single-cell organism, again, is just something like this. Maybe you'll have a nucleus, or maybe not have a nucleus, and then it has the cell membrane, which we remember allows the organisms into and out of the cell. So this surface area here has got a very large, so this has a high surface area to volume ratio, so therefore it allows easy exchange of substances. So this could be gases, it could be, I don't know, whatever else it needs, proteins, etc., etc. The next one we've got then is multicellular organisms. So multicellular means made up of multiple cells, have a smaller surface area compared to their volume. So therefore, it struggles to get enough substances to supply the entire volume of the cell. So this means we need some sort of exchange surface for efficient diffusion, which we will look at in the next video. So the exchange surfaces have to allow enough of the necessary substances to pass through. The final thing that we have is this idea about adaptations of exchange surfaces. So exchange surfaces want to be thin. Okay, so the first thing, thinness. So this allows a very small distance for example, let's say we have oxygen and CO2 to diffuse across. If it was large, then you would have a problem because it would take time for things to get across. And also the oxygen and CO2 might get stuck, might be passed along. It depends what this is crossing here. So you might need, for example, a lot of oxygen and to remove a lot of CO2, for example, if you're exercising. So if you have a very close one, then you can get that exchange very quickly and you can increase your O2 transfer rate very, very quickly. However, if you have a big gap, then it takes longer for you to do that because it takes longer for the oxygen to cross. So therefore, having a thin membrane is very important because it allows a very short distance to diffuse. As we've discussed, a large surface area means that we can have a lot of substances diffusing at once. So for example, for question 2, if you have a very small surface here, but then you have a much larger, so for example, a circle is probably the best one. If you have something that's a not very good surface, so you've got like lots of jagged ridges, etc., it might not be the best. While here, you might have a much bigger surface area with this like a sphere type structure. So that's something that you want to consider about this because it allows more substances to cross. So if you've got a more area, that means more substances can pass through. The smaller the area you have, less substances will pass through. Exchange surfaces have lots of blood vessels. This is very important because it allows you to, particularly in animals, it allows you to get stuff into and out of the blood very quickly. So for example, if in the lungs you have the blood running right next to the blood vessels, the veins, and the arteries run very, very close to the lungs and the alveoli sacs. And this allows very quick transfer of blood because it allows that the oxygen and the CO2 can transfer quickly, and therefore the body can quickly pump that to other parts of the body. And finally, gas exchange surfaces in animals are often ventilated too. This allows air to move in and out very quickly. So that brings to the end of the key things that you need to know from this page. And if you have any questions, please let me know. Also, try the question at the bottom. I will go through the question. So please pause the video, try the question, and then we will go through it. Okay, so let's go through this question. Very straightforward question, very similar to what we've done. So a bacteria cell can be represented by a 2 micrometer times 2 micrometer times 1 micrometer block. So in this case here, 2, 2, and 1. As an example, it doesn't really matter exactly how you structure it, but it's the same idea here. So a width of 2, a height of 2, and a length of 1. So if you want to find the surface area here, which is the harder calculation, you are going to calculate the different areas. So the first of all you've got is a 2 by 2. So it's going to be 2 times 2 times 10 to the minus 6 times 2 times 10 to the minus 6. Then we're going to add your surface 2, which is the sides. So that's going to be 2 times 2 times 10 to the minus 6 times 1 times 10 to the minus 6. And then finally, we're going to calculate the top and the bottom. So surface 3, which is 2 times 10 to the minus 6 times 1 times 10 to the minus 6. Plugging those in the calculator, you will get the following. So 2 times 10 to the minus 6 times 2 times 10 to the minus 6. So again, just be careful with these questions on the calculator. You can simplify it mathematically if you're more comfortable, but if you are just plugging all the numbers in step by step, it's really important that you just take your time so you get the correct answer. So here the surface area is going to be 1.6 times 10 to the minus 11 meters squared. The next one that we have is the volume. So the volume of this one is going to be 2 times 10 to the minus 6 times 2 times 10 to the minus 6 times 1 times 10 to the minus 6. So 2 times 10 to the minus 6 times 2 times 10 to the minus 6 times 1 times 10 to the minus 6 gives you a volume of 4 times 10 to the minus 18 meters squared. So the surface area to volume ratio is 1.6 times 10 to the minus 11, 4 times 10 to the minus 18. So this, you might think, oh, what's going on? So the first thing to watch out for is the powers. This surface area is much greater than the volume. Remember, it's negative, so it's a power of negative 11. So therefore, this surface area is far bigger than the volume. So one thing that we can do is we can find the ratio of this, because you will need to find it. So here, essentially, if we do 1.6 times 10 to the minus 11 divided by 4 times 10 to the minus 18, you essentially get 4 times 10 to the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So 4 times 10 to the 6 to 1. So all we've done here is divide both sides by 4 times 10 to the 18. And this is where you get, so your surface area is essentially 4 million times larger than the volume. Okay, thank you for listening. Any questions, please let me know.